What if I told you that some Hollywood actors are quietly walking away from fame, red carpets, and multi-million dollar mansions? Not because they failed, but because they found something better. No paparazzi, no pressure, no pretending. Instead, they're choosing a place where smiles are real, neighbors feel like family, and life moves at a human pace. A place the world keeps underestimating. The Philippines. And when intelligence analysts and global observers began noticing this unusual pattern, one question kept coming up again and again. Why here? Why would people who have everything choose this? The answer isn't what you think. From the outside, it didn't make sense. Hollywood actors are trained to chase visibility, attention, luxury, exclusivity. Yet reports began surfacing of celebrities spending longer vacations in the Philippines, then buying property, then staying quietly. No announcements, no press releases, no interviews, just presence. Observers noticed something strange. Once they arrived, they didn't rush. They slowed down. They blended in. They smiled more. One analyst reportedly said, they arrive famous, and within weeks, they look free. That alone raised eyebrows. In Hollywood, time is money. In the Philippines, time is life. Actors used to 16-hour filming days suddenly found themselves waking up to ocean air, local coffee, and neighbors greeting them like old friends. No one cared who they were. No one asked for autographs. They were just people. They ate local food. They walked barefoot. They laughed without cameras. And something changed inside them. They weren't chasing happiness anymore. They were experiencing it. What truly held them wasn't luxury. It was people. Filipino culture has a quiet power, warmth without expectation, kindness without transaction, joy without excess. Families eat together. Strangers greet you. Communities look out for each other. One observer noted, in the Philippines, success isn't measured by how high you climb, but by how many people you uplift along the way. For actors who spent years being judged, compared, and consumed by the public, this was something they hadn't felt in decades. Belonging. That's when the realization hit. Fame gives attention, but the Philippines gives peace. Money buys comfort, but Filipino culture gives meaning. These actors didn't come looking for real estate. They came looking for rest. And without realizing it, they found a home, not just in land, but in lifestyle, values, and human connection. And this was only the beginning. At first, many people didn't believe it. Hollywood actors, choosing the Philippines? To outsiders, it sounded strange. To those who understood the country, it made perfect sense. In Hollywood, life moves fast. Too fast. Every moment is scheduled, photographed, judged. Success is loud, pressure is constant, and privacy barely exists. For many actors, fame became a cage made of flashing lights and expectations. But the Philippines offered something different. Something quieter. Something human. Here, mornings don't begin with paparazzi. They begin with sunlight touching the ocean, the sound of waves, and neighbors greeting each other with genuine smiles. There is no rush to impress, no competition to prove worth. Just life, slow, warm, and real. For Hollywood stars used to noise, this silence felt powerful. What truly surprised them wasn't just the beaches or the weather. It was the people. Filipino hospitality isn't something you can explain easily. It's something you feel. Strangers welcome you like family. Conversations feel sincere. Smiles are not forced. Respect is deeply rooted in culture. Some actors admitted that for the first time in years, they felt invisible and free. They could walk, eat, laugh, and exist without being watched or judged. In small towns and quiet communities, nobody cared about movie credits or red carpet awards. People cared about character, about kindness, about humility. That simplicity became addictive. They realized something shocking. In a place where no one worships fame, they finally felt human again. Another reason quietly pulled them closer: Filipino values. Family comes first. Always. Actors noticed how Sundays were reserved for loved ones, how meals were shared, stories exchanged, laughter echoed through homes. Success wasn't measured by money alone, but by connection, respect, and togetherness. Many Hollywood lives were filled with luxury, yet empty of grounding. In the Philippines, they found balance. They saw resilience in everyday people, fishermen smiling despite hardship, vendors working with pride, families staying joyful even through struggle. It was inspiring, not dramatic, just real. And slowly, Admiration turned into respect. The Philippines wasn't trying to impress anyone, and that's exactly what impressed them the most. Living costs were lower, yes, but that wasn't the main reason. What mattered was quality of life. Fresh food, open air, genuine conversations, time that felt unhurried, days that didn't feel wasted chasing approval. Hollywood taught them to always want more. The Philippines taught them to appreciate enough. Some actors began spending longer stays. Weeks turned into months. Rentals turned into homes. Temporary visits turned into permanent decisions. Not because they were escaping something, but because they were finally finding something. Peace. And that's when the quiet truth became clear. The Philippines wasn't attracting Hollywood actors because of luxury. It was attracting them because of soul. Because here, success doesn't scream. It smiles. It shares food. It welcomes strangers. It survives storms and still stands proud. The same resilience that defines Filipinos, the ability to endure, adapt, and remain warm-hearted, was what drew the world's most famous faces closer. They didn't come to be stars. They came to feel alive again. And unknowingly, they found a country that didn't need fame to shine. At first, no one believed the rumors. Hollywood had always been the center of everything: fame, money, influence, power. So when quiet whispers started circulating that some of the biggest actors in the world were looking far beyond Beverly Hills, people laughed it off. Why would anyone leave Hollywood? Why would someone with unlimited wealth, private jets, and global recognition choose a country most of the world barely understands? But the CIA analysts didn't laugh. They noticed something strange happening over time. Patterns, unusual travel routes, long stays that didn't make headlines, luxury purchases that never made gossip blogs. Actors weren't just visiting the Philippines. They were staying. They were returning. They were investing emotionally, not just financially. One analyst quietly said, "They're not coming for fame. They're coming to disappear." And that was the first real clue. Because the Philippines offered something Hollywood never could: anonymity without loneliness, wealth without pressure, and peace without isolation. For the first time in their lives, these actors could walk freely, eat among locals, and be treated like human beings instead of brands. And that feeling? It changed everything. What shocked the analysts even more was how deeply these actors connected with Filipino culture. Not the tourist version, not the filtered version shown in travel ads. The real version. They ate where locals ate. They listened more than they spoke. They watched families share meals, stories, laughter, even when money was tight. One actor reportedly said, "I've won awards, but I've never felt this rich." In Hollywood, success is loud. In the Philippines, happiness is quiet. The CIA noticed something subtle but powerful. Actors weren't drawn to luxury. They were drawn to belonging. They saw resilience everywhere. Smiles after storms. Laughter after hardship. Hope even when life wasn't easy. Filipinos didn't pretend life was perfect. They simply refused to let hardship define them. That kind of resilience confused people who grew up in comfort. But it also inspired them. Because for the first time, success wasn't about escaping problems. It was about standing strong inside them. The longer these actors stayed, the more Hollywood started to feel empty. In Los Angeles, every conversation had an agenda. Every smile was calculated. Every relationship felt transactional. But in the Philippines, people didn't ask, "What do you do?" They asked, "Have you eaten?" That question alone changed everything. Filipino hospitality wasn't performative. It wasn't forced. It wasn't transactional. It was instinctive. Actors used to red carpets found themselves sitting on plastic chairs, eating home-cooked meals, laughing with people who had nothing to gain from them. No cameras. No expectations. No pressure to perform. Just presence. The CIA analysts noted a pattern. Actors were becoming calmer, more grounded, less obsessed with image. Some even stopped posting online altogether. Hollywood fame gives you attention. Filipino culture gives you connection. And once you taste connection, attention feels cheap. Another reason shocked even the analysts. In the Philippines, celebrities could finally fail. They could make mistakes. They could look tired. They could be imperfect. And nobody cared. There was no cancellation culture waiting to destroy them. No constant judgment. No relentless comparison. Filipino culture valued humility over ego, character over clout, respect over reputation. One actor reportedly said, "Here, I'm not expected to be anything. I'm allowed to just exist." That freedom was intoxicating. Hollywood builds you up just to watch you fall. The Philippines lets you stand quietly without pushing you higher or pulling you down. The CIA realized something profound. The Philippines wasn't attracting actors because of money or scenery. It was attracting them because it offered emotional safety. A place where success didn't isolate you, where fame didn't define you, where being human was enough. By the time analysts compiled their findings, the conclusion was unavoidable. This wasn't a trend. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't hype. It was a cultural pull. Hollywood actors weren't escaping America. They were rediscovering humanity. And Filipino culture, with its resilience, warmth, humor, faith, and community, was at the center of it all. The Philippines didn't promise a perfect life. It promised a meaningful one. A place where storms come and go, but people stay strong. Where joy survives hardship. Where pride isn't loud, it's lived. The CIA report ended with a sentence that said more than pages of data ever could. They didn't come to the Philippines to be famous. They came to remember what it feels like to be human. And once you feel that, you never truly leave. What happened next is the moment everything changed. Up until now, many people watching still believe this was luck, coincidence, a one-time performance. But part 4 is where that illusion completely shattered. Because the analysts didn't just look at what the Filipinos were doing. They started asking why. Why did they remain calm when pressure increased? Why did they adapt faster than anyone else? Why did they seem unbreakable? One analyst leaned back and said quietly, "This isn't training. This is something deeper." And that was the moment the real investigation began. The Filipino participants were observed during moments most people never see. Moments of waiting, moments of silence, moments where no one is watching. And surprisingly, those were the moments that revealed the most. They didn't complain. They didn't panic. They didn't fall apart. Instead, they talked about home, about family, about responsibility, about carrying something bigger than themselves. And the analysts realized something shocking. These people weren't driven by ego. They were driven by purpose. What truly separated them wasn't how they performed under success. It was how they behaved under stress, under long periods of uncertainty, under moments where outcomes weren't clear, under conditions where motivation usually collapses. Instead of frustration, they showed patience. Instead of fear, they showed focus. Instead of selfishness, they showed unity. One observer said something that stayed in the room long after. These people don't just endure hardship, they're familiar with it. And that statement hit hard. Because history matters. Culture matters. Generations of overcoming struggle, economic, social, personal, had shaped a mindset that couldn't be simulated in any controlled environment. This wasn't about toughness. This was about adaptation. The ability to remain human while being pushed. As the observations continued, the analysts began comparing reactions. Not outcomes, not performance, but responses. When things went wrong, others reacted emotionally. When things went wrong here, the Filipinos responded logically. When uncertainty increased, others demanded clarity. The Filipinos created it themselves. One analyst said quietly, almost stunned, "They don't wait for direction. They become direction." And that's when the phrase surfaced again. Built different. Not louder. Not more aggressive. Not more forceful. Just grounded. Calm. Purpose-driven. Their confidence wasn't arrogance. It was rooted in identity. They knew who they were. By the end of this phase, the room felt different. The skepticism was gone. What remained was curiosity and respect. One final observation was written on the board. This resilience cannot be trained quickly. It must be lived. And that's when the biggest realization landed. This wasn't about proving superiority. It was about understanding why some people don't break when pressure rises. And the answer was clear. Because when you grow up carrying responsibility, community, family, and pride, pressure doesn't feel foreign. It feels familiar. And as part 4 closed, one thing was undeniable. Whatever comes next will push limits even further. And the world watching is about to realize this story is far from over. At this point, the question was no longer why some Hollywood actors were quietly choosing the Philippines. The real question became, why were they doing it without telling anyone? Because what was happening wasn't a trend. It wasn't a headline. It was a personal awakening. One well-known actor, not an A-list name you'd instantly recognize, but someone whose face you've seen in blockbuster films, arrived quietly. No cameras. No announcements. Just a simple trip that was supposed to last 2 weeks. 2 weeks turned into a month. A month turned into something much deeper. He didn't come looking for luxury. He came looking for peace, and found something he didn't know he was missing. He later described it in private conversations like this. In Hollywood, everything feels loud. Even silence has pressure. But in the Philippines, mornings were slow. People smiled without needing something in return. Neighbors spoke like family. Strangers treated him like a human being, not a brand. He walked through local streets without bodyguards, ate food made by people who didn't care who he was, laughed with fishermen, drivers, store owners, people who lived fully, even without excess. And that's when it hit him. Success didn't feel heavy here. Life didn't feel rushed. Happiness didn't feel staged. For the first time in years, he felt normal. This time, he didn't book a hotel. He looked for land. Not a mansion, not a compound, just a home, somewhere near the sea, close to real people. And he wasn't alone. Others followed similar paths. Actors, writers, directors, people you've seen on screen, but would never expect to live quietly abroad. They didn't want attention. They wanted life. No press releases. No Instagram tours. Just a reset. And quietly, without anyone noticing, the Philippines became something unexpected, a place where fame came to disappear and humanity came back.